For all my 2000s babies, our time is here. After M. Night Shyamalan killed, and I mean murdered, one of everybody's favorite shows in a live action format, we thought that we were never going to see this universe explored in live action again. Then Netflix pulled up and said, "Hold my beer," in 2019, when they announced that they had gotten the creators back to tell a live action reimagining of the beloved cartoon. And here we are, 5 years later, after both creators left the project and started Avatar Studios over at Paramount. We finally get to see the project that they chose to leave. Now, I know what you're asking. Is this show good? Is it better than the movie? Does it live up to the cartoon? And all I have to say is, calm the fuck down and let this intro play.
Yeah, I forget the next couple lines, but then it goes, Secret tunnel, through the mountain.
First things first, all the people out there hating on the actresses playing Azula and May because of their weight are disgusting. That shit ain't cool or funny, and that has nothing to do with the performance in the show. Also, the fact that they are kids and y'all are making fun of their weight is just crazy hating, and y'all should actually feel ashamed of yourselves. That's the only time I want to address it in this video, so for real, like, that's just not cool, and I'm not letting that shit slide in my comments or nothing like that.
How stupid do you think I am? Pretty stupid. Run!
Boy, oh boy, and I know y'all saw that little intro I said. This is the non-spoiler portion of the video, so I'm going to try not to spoil anything that happens in this show, in the live action version at least. And I'm going to go ahead and start off with a little rundown of the original Avatar if you have not seen it. And I'm not talking about the blue people, I'm talking about the cartoon only. Avatar: The Last Airbender was a cartoon that aired on Nickelodeon for 3 highly praised seasons, where we get introduced to the main gang of characters. Aang, the Avatar who's the master of all 4 elements, who's been away for the last 100 years while the war was at war. Katara, his little ting. Sokka, the backbender. Toph, the realest motherfucker on the earth. And Zuko, your average emo kid. Obviously, their characters are a lot more interesting and are way more in depth, but that is the basic rundown of the characters in the show. They also spin off to the next Avatar, Korra, after the series is over with, but that is a discussion for another video. I absolutely love Avatar, more than Marvel and DC superheroes, more than any anime that I've ever seen, more than any sitcom I've ever seen, and more than Alright, let me not lie. But the point is, I love this show, I love the lore, the characters, and everything the show was made of. And after watching the show, I was incredibly disappointed. I thought the characters were cast extremely well, but for most of the series they were underutilized due to bad writing. The story is a different interpolation of the show, so while it stays on the same basic beats, it definitely takes away a large amount of the appeal from the original show. The pacing of the series feels very rushed as they are skipping around the events of the first season, and the show is not bad, but it's not good either. It's extremely average and borderline below average. If you enjoyed the original, you'll probably find something to enjoy in this series. If you love the original, you'll probably hate this series. And if you never watched the original, you'll probably love this. Having loved the original, I really did not like the liberties the showrunners took with this, but once you start looking at it as its own thing, it becomes slightly more bearable. I'll give it a cool 2.5 stars out of 5. But for real, like, if you've watched the show, like I've watched the show, just try not to look at it through the lens of it being a direct adaptation, because it does take a lot of liberties with the show and it's really a different feel than the original show was. So once I was able to turn that off even just a little bit, it became a little bit more enjoyable than me just criticizing it for no apparent reason. With all that being said, now here's a warning. Alright, I'm giving you this warning right now, so be warned. I'm about to go into spoilers, so if you haven't seen the show yet, go ahead and go watch it and then come back to this later. Can't believe they gave Appa a little ting in this show. Oh, y'all thought I was serious, huh? I got y'all. Now go ahead, head out.
Do it. Do it! We've all seen enough death.
Let's go ahead and start with the good of the show, because I don't want to start off on a negative note. I think that the set designers did a really good job at creating the beautiful settings of the animation in real life. Shout out to them. Like, the sets look great. Also, the score, even though it's mainly just the animated show score and themes, they're fucking beautiful. It was amazing in the original and it's amazing here. Like I said in the non-spoiler section, The casting directors did a great job with everybody in this show. Specifically, Gordon Cormier is Aang. Like, I can't see anybody else being a better Aang than him in this show. And Dallas Liu probably gives my favorite performance in the entire show. Getting Danny Pudi to come in as a mechanist is also the biggest dub the casting directors could have done. Actually, I lied. This is the biggest dub they could have done.
My cabbage!
I mean, the cabbage merchant is back. The same actor and all. That's all that I needed. You'll get some really good acting here, and I definitely think that the best episodes of this season were 2, 5, and 6. And I think they improved on some aspects of the show, like Zuko's and Iroh's relationship gets a lot more love in this first season than it did in the OG's first season back when the show premiered. Also, Zuko's backstory with his crew and how they became his crew was incredible. And also, it's just pretty much Zuko stuff that really got better throughout this adaptation. Last thing before I go over to the next section is that I think they did a great job on the CGI and all the creatures and spirits. Like, they literally look ripped directly out of the show. Like, it's incredible, and I love them for that.
Or you could just let me use you for target practice.
I mean, there's not really a lot of meh, but there's a couple things I wanted to point out, because these weren't particularly bad, but they weren't particularly good either. Like, episodes 4 and 8 are both pretty meh. You'll get half of the episode having great stuff, like in episode 4 with all the Zuko and Iroh stuff. Then you'll get some really bad stuff in there, like Katara and Sokka in the Secret Tunnels of Love. Like, what the f is that, bro? Also, the bending is kind of a mixed bag for me. There's a key part of the bending that's a negative for me, but I'll say it is much better than the movie. The movement and speed of the elements is much more fluid and faster than the film, but it doesn't feel like they utilize the martial arts element of the bending, and it's more mystical and magical. Going with the bending, there's probably a nitpick that I'm gonna say, but I'm just gonna say it here so I won't get into it later. But why do their clothes never get dirty? I mean, like, they don't get affected by the elements around them. They never get wet when they get hit with water bending. They're never affected by the dirt of the earth. And it's a very minor thing, but it bothered me the whole time I watched the show, and I couldn't, like, stop thinking about it. I mean, that motherfucker Zuko popped out of the water in episode 8, and bro was dry as fuck like 2 minutes later.
Oh no.
Alright, I think the bad is deep as fuck, so go ahead and lock in for me, dog. First off, the writing and directing in the show is pretty weak. The writing relies on a lot of exposition instead of action, so instead of seeing things that happen like Aang loving a penguin sled or stuff like that, where we get to see the joy that Aang brings to the show, that stuff is just explained to us. By action, I'm not talking about fighting, but the action of doing something. All that does is slow down the pace to a point where the audience feels like they're missing some key stuff, because we're just hearing them talk about it, but we're not actually seeing them do any of the stuff that they're talking about. Like, they made Gran a walking exposition machine, and she just recites the whole OG intro word for word, bar for bar. Also, the line delivery in a lot of these scenes are not great, and I know it's not the actors' fault, because the actors will turn around and give us a great scene and great performances a few episodes later. So that really falls on the director's shoulders to get the best out of the actors, even though the script is pretty weak. The green screen in the show also is noticeably bad, and that mainly has to do with the lighting of the scene. Oftentimes the characters would be lit weirdly, and it doesn't really match the background, so it makes it feel wrong. I'm not saying I want them to go out to these fictional locations, because I know that's impossible. All I'm saying is that they could do a better job at making this green screen not so noticeable by fixing the lighting, because I know it's not supposed to be as visually distracting in the spirit world, because you can kind of set that aside from reality. But when they're walking around somewhere like Omashu, or they're on the back of Appa, it just looks kind of odd. Tying back into the bending, the fight choreography was lagging in a lot of scenes, and Dallas Liu does a really great job in his action scenes, but that's because he brings a lot of his martial arts background into him fighting. So they lean away from the martial art aspect of bending, so instead of incorporating the bending in their attacks, it feels like the bending only happens during a sweep, or they just hold their hands out and the elements just do its own thing. Like in the show, you'll see that whenever they fight, every movement, every action they do, it implements their bending in a certain way. Every punch, a fireball comes out or a gust of wind comes out. But here, it's just only on like a sweep, or it's only when they kind of extrude their hands so the fire will come out like it's just magic, if you know what I'm trying to say. The main issues I have with the show relies mainly on the mischaracterizations of the characters. I feel like characters like Aang, Katara, and Sokka are shells on themselves because the showrunners wanted to make a more mature take on the show. Aang isn't the lighthearted, goofy kid that he is in the animated series, because now the weight of the issues that the world is at war is falling directly on his shoulders. Katara isn't really motherly to this group because everybody is more mature, so she doesn't have to be the mother kind of figure in this group. And Sokka, he's not a sexist. I'm not trying to say he should be sexist, but he should be sexist because that falls into this arc he has with the Kyoshi warriors, and he kind of learns really early on that, you know, women are just as capable as men are, and this is a part of Sokka's character, you know what I'm saying? So that's something that we're kind of missing in this show. We don't get to see these characters grow into the people that they'll eventually become in the animated series because they pretty much start out that way in the show. So it kind of takes away from an aspect of their growth without them starting in this flawed place that they normally start out at. And I'm not saying Aang started out flawed, because I think Aang was perfect in the show, you know, as a childish, goofy kind of character, because he is just 12 years old. But if you take that away from him and make him more serious, it's just kind of distracting to everybody that's seen the animated show. In this live action version, we get someone like Boomy, who is a mentor towards Aang in the original show, and helps him understand that although saving the world will be a difficult task, being able to rely on his friends will help him with his journey. In this show, Boomy's just a bitter old man. Shao was not the smart, calculated general he is in the original show, but now he's just a tool to help Azula look better and more menacing. And Azula, I think she gets done the worst out of everybody in the show. Just because, one, she's introduced way too early, so we're starting her development earlier than normal. But here, she's not the prodigy that she was in the show. In the original cartoon, she was a prodigy when everybody meets her for the first time. She strikes fear into everybody's eyes, and she's cold, calculated, just perfect in every form. We even see this with her firebending. It takes a more prestige form in the blue fire. She doesn't even get the blue fire in this show. Like, this is something that she's gonna have to earn for some reason, and I don't understand why. In the original animated show, we don't get to see her break, and we don't see all the character flaws until season 3. And it just is a eventual build-up that we'll never get to see, because now we're starting off in this flawed place already. So it kind of takes away from her losing it all at the end of the show. That doesn't take into the fact that she's barely in this first season to begin with. She's only there to try to prove herself to Ozai, and we see her uncertain of herself. She's doubting herself, and she's jealous of Zuko. Like, Azula in the show would have never been jealous of Zuko. A couple more things I want to quickly touch on is that episodes 1, 3, and 7 are all particularly weak, and the wigs are not great, like, at all. I mean, you can tell this just by looking at Yue and Iroh. I mean, I know they're trying to make it look more like the show, like visually, but that beard that Iroh has that they gave to Paul, that was not great. I was not rocking with it. Because Paul has such a great beard automatically, and they just kind of messed it up with the little gap in between. Also, Aang only being able to talk to past lives at their shrines is particularly lame to me. Like, you know how many times you saw Aang talk to Roku in the original show, and now we'll have to wait till he's at a shrine of Roku just for him to talk to this past life he has? Like, that's so lame. The wackest thing in the show, though, is that Aang does not learn a lick of waterbending the entire season. Bro does not do one move whatsoever with any sort of water. Like, this is book 1. Water. You don't learn a single bit of waterbending in the entire season? Like, and now we have to go to book 2 where he's trying to learn earthbending without having learned any water, which I just don't understand why. And I can go on and on about even more flaws I had in the show, and they're just really small at that point. But then the video would be longer than I'd want. I mean, this is already my longest video, so let me go ahead and go to the next part.
My first girlfriend turned into the moon. That's rough, buddy.
Look, man, this show is not horrible at all, but there are a lot of things that they can improve on. And the good thing is that they are all fixable for the second season. They have a talented cast and have such a strong source material that they should lean more into it. Again, if you love this show, that's great, bro. More power to you. And if you hate this show, that's cool too. You just ain't fuck with it. I'm somewhere in the middle, but if you haven't seen it, just go ahead and watch it and make your own opinion. I'm not going to tell you if you should like this or if you should not like this. I just want to give my opinion on the topic. One thing's for sure, it ain't living up to the OG. Thanks again for watching this video. If you wouldn't mind, please go ahead, like and subscribe to the channel for future uploads. And if you liked what I said in this video, then tap into an episode of my podcast, J Tendencies, wherever you happen to find podcasts. I'm Jay Reese, and I'll see you next time.